Give it up for David Gillick.
Well, look, I'm really looking forward to chatting to you all. I suppose what I'm going to talk a little bit about is, and I suppose it kind of mentioned a little bit in my introduction, is the various identities that I have had, and talk you through a few of them. I suppose the reality is that a lot of people might know me for my running, my athletics, 400 metres. And I can easily stand up here and talk about my athletics. It's very statsy. I was defined by a number for a long period of my life, okay? I'd walk into a room and people would ask me what my personal best was. I'd mention my number and it was either, oh, you can stay or you can leave. That was the way you were just, you were introduced, a number before a name. Now, before I start kind of talking about a number, do we have any athletes in the audience? We're all friends here, come on, we're all friends here. Usually I get half of one, But would anyone know where this place is? No, the Santry, yeah, north side, Santry, okay. So what I want to do is, a big number in my life was 44.7, okay, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. But instead of me standing here talking numbers, has anyone ever ran a 400 metres? No? But you know what? It's your lucky day, okay? All right, okay? The alcohol will come a little bit later, right? All I want you to do, okay, is you're all going to run a lap of this track with me, okay? Your bum is not going to leave the seat, all right? All I want you to do is just get your arms and your knees going. Okay, hang on, I haven't said go yet, okay? I love the way everyone's like, oh no, and then suddenly everyone's all like, yes, yes. I know people have drinks and stuff like that, so you can hold them and try and do it, or you can just put them, but just please don't kick them at me, okay? Right, I want you to imagine you're here on the start line. We can all see that? All right, and you're in your nice one-piece sprint suit, okay? When I say go, I'm just going to bring it around for 44 seconds, okay? Arms and knees, please. I've tried this before, and once or twice people have ran at me. Bum does not leave the seat. Okay, are we ready? Good. On your marks, get set, away you go. Come on, arms and knees, good. Loads of noise, loads of noise. Keep it going, keep it going. Here we go, 5 seconds, come on. Keep it going, keep it going. We're going to head down the back straight. You're approaching halfway. Come on, back straight. You got a nice tailwind behind you. Here we go, 200 metres. Come on, keep going, keep going. This is where it gets tough, the top end. Come on, you're nearly there, boom. We're 100 metres to go. Come on, keep going, keep going. 3, 2, 1, and you can relax. Okay. See, it's longer than you think, isn't it? By the way, I am loving the enthusiasm. That was brilliant, okay? But you didn't win. Everybody won. It was a blanket finish. Okay, 44 seconds, right? This was my why. This was everything, okay? Getting around as fast as I possibly could around an athletics track was just everything. It meant the world to me. I'm going to bring you through a whistle-stop tour of my career. Started as a young kid. So fortunate to grow up in an area where I had fantastic volunteers. I'm the youngest of 4. I joined my local athletics club, Dundrum, South Dublin, because my brothers and sisters did it. Fast forward a couple of years, got my first big break in 2005. I went to the European Indoor Championships and I won a gold medal. It was Ireland's first gold medal in a sprint event since Bob Tisdale back in 1932, okay? You might know him, you might know him. And it was fantastic. Madrid, stuff of dreams, a lap of honour, out on Naveen, on the podium, the tricolour, everything I dreamt of as a little kid. Came back to Dublin on the Monday, the airplane landed, the door of the airplane opened, and there was a guy with bagpipes in a kilt. And he brought me through Dublin airport, and he was blown away, and I was waving at people going, nobody has a clue who I am. It was weird, it was odd, I was young, I was in college at the time, came home, my neighbour came in and was like, Jesus, David, we knew you were good, but we didn't think you were that good. And I think that's just the Irish well done, The following day, I was studying in DIT in Angel Street in Dublin, and the Lewis started that year, 2005. I went down, hopped on the Lewis, they used to hand out a free Metro paper, a free kind of handout. I hopped on the Lewis, packed Lewis, and the guy next to me is looking at the Metro paper, he's looking at my head, and it was my fat head in the back pages. I'd never experienced anything like that, okay? I was 21 at the time, And yes, it was great. And Coppers on a Thursday night, we got in free with my mates, VIP. I was like, the lads thought, this is brilliant. We've made it. But deep down with me, I struggled because straight away there was a level of expectation, a level of pressure that I'd never experienced before. Prior to that, it was a little bit of fun. Nobody expected a whole lot from me. Next minute you win a medal, everything changes. I struggled with that, and I'm not afraid to admit that. The following year, 2006, European indoors are here, European outdoors are here. I step up, I went to Gothenburg, I improved. I was now running about 45.5 seconds. Went to Gothenburg, European Outdoor Championships. Come on, try and make a final. Top 8 in Europe will be progression. Unfortunately, I came paddy last in the semi-final. And I'm talking paddy last. I was way out the back door in the semi-final. Crossed the line, devastated, embarrassed, gutted. I look up, I see the mixed media zone, the only exit point in the stadium, okay? And that's where I now do a little bit of work. It's the only exit point in the stadium. Win, lose or draw, you're walking through that mixed media zone. So I had to walk through, and I'll never forget it. The question straight away was like, she said to me, David, you won the European Indoors last year, you've come here and you haven't even made a final. And I can remember kind of thinking, whoa, okay, like bullets. I didn't know how to answer it. I gave her the party line and I walked out of there crushed. That was the biggest school day of my whole entire life. I sat down with a pen and paper, the greatest tools you'll ever have, and a bit of time. And I asked myself, where do I want to go? What am I doing? I finished college that year, 2006, and I decided, thanks to my mum, who was ironing in front of the TV, and she said to me, what are you going to do now, David? And I said, I'll just get a job. And she goes, would you not give running a go? And when my mum gave me that little nudge, I said, yeah, do you know what, you're right. I relocated over to Loughborough University in the UK, a hotbed for athletics. I was around like-minded people. I loved it. I ducked to water. My times improved. I was getting a little bit faster. I retained my European title in 2007 in Birmingham. In a time that qualified me for the Beijing Olympic Games, I wanted more. Again, pen and paper came out and I began to work on this little tool, or this little pyramid here, okay? And this is the honest thing that I'll show you, I'll share with you, because a great quote I came across was, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And I was wishing I was going to run fast times. And I was challenged one day and someone said to me, David, what's your goal? And at the time it was 45.5. Why? That was the Olympic standard. And he said, how are you going to do that? And I said, I'm going to train hard. And he said, I know that. How are you going to do it? And that's when the penny dropped. I didn't have a plan. And I know there's people here who have hopes and dreams and goals, all of your own. And many people are going to put a plan in place that you achieve that. I certainly didn't, until that resonated with me, sat down, pen and paper, and I put this little pyramid together. I got very focused on where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I went through all the previous results of Global Athletic Championships, 400 metres, and on average, 44.8 became the number to get a male 400 metre athlete to a global final, top 8 in the world. Okay, I wrote down 44.8 in the top of that pyramid. And hand on heart, the little voice, and we all know that little voice, inside my head was like, no chance, David. You're from Ireland. Your mum, we're not that quick. But I challenged myself, and this little pyramid, the little blocks became my point ones. And each block was a connection. It was a relationship, whether it was with myself or with other people. One of the first days I was over in Loughborough, I walked out of the HIPAC, the High Performance Athletic Centre, and I walked past the glass wall, and I looked through the glass wall, and I saw my new coach, my new training partner, and about 2 or 3 other people sitting around the table. And I later found out that one was a strength and conditioning coach, one was a physio, and I think one was a nutritionist. What were they doing? Collaborating, communicating. And I quickly realised, if I want to be at a high level, I need people, I need a team. And at the bottom of that pyramid is people. And I banged on doors, and I grabbed people who had expertise and knowledge in different areas, and I kind of said, you know what, I need you. And I kicked my ego to touch, and I showed an element of weakness, if you like. Yes, I was good in certain parts, not so good in other parts, and I created a team of people around me. And then the pictures that you see were simply just things that resonated with me, things that motivated me, that intrinsic motivation that I needed to get myself out of bed some days and really knuckle down and put it in. And it all came to this little piece of chipboard that I hung on the wall of the house that I was renting over in Loughborough in the UK. Now, I'm not Santa Claus. I'm not saying rock out of here, put something like that together and wake up, it's all going to come true. It took me about 2 years to get to the very top of that. But thankfully, in 2009, I made a world final and I ran inside 44.8. 44.7 is my personal best, which I suppose it signifies to me the amazing power that you have with a pen and paper and a bit of time and a bit of honesty with yourself and that relationship with yourself. Now, the challenge for me wasn't going to World Championships and Olympic Games and stuff like that. It was what came next. I challenged myself. I went to America, didn't pan out, got injured, missed the London Olympics, came back. I said, you know what, I'm going to give it another go. Went down to Canberra in Australia, preparing for a race in Japan. And in late April, I tore my Achilles. I now hadn't competed in a number of years. I was getting a little bit freaked out of what I was going to do next. And if those of you who have been to camera, it's really expensive. So I was beginning to worry. I was approaching 30. And I was a little bit like, well, what am I going to do? So after tearing my Achilles on the track that day, I decided, you know what? I have enough of this. I'm going to retire. And I felt at that time it was a bit of a weight lifted. You know, I had a couple of injuries, hadn't raced in a few years, wasn't making any money from the sport. It was time to move on. I went back to the apartment I was renting with my wife, Charlotte. And because we were only there for a year, we didn't buy a bed, we bought a mattress, okay? And I came in and she had did all the clothes and it was all neatly folded and I had a tantrum, okay? Best way of describing it, the mattress and everything went up in the air and it all crashed down and then she said to me, you better clean that up. And I think that was my post-athletic, life. I went to bed that night and again, this is the honest truth. I woke up to an email from a production company in Dublin asking me if I wanted to do Celebrity MasterChef. Excuse the language. I said, fuck it, I'm doing nothing else. So came all the way home and I managed to win that. That was 2013. Yahoo! And I continued to milk the backside out of it. I wrote a couple of cookbooks and all that. But you know what? That's life. Sometimes you kind of wake up and you go, how in God's name did I get here? But it was a journey, and I can remember going down to Dundrum Shopping Centre, and instead of being kind of, people might nudge and go, there's the runner. Now it was like, there's the chef. But fast forward a couple of years, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I struggled, okay? I really struggled with who I was and my identity. For so long, I was a runner. Okay, you know, if I was introduced to someone, this is the athlete, this is the runner, and people would have an interest, that's different. What I didn't realise was that all my self-worth, confidence, self-belief, everything came from one area of my life, and that was my athletics. It was a river of confidence when things were going well, PBs, medals, all that good stuff. When that river dried up, I struggled. And after 2 weeks in retirement, I panicked, and I said, I need a job, I need money. If I have more money, I'll be content, I'll be happy, I'll have status, I'll have identity. And I threw myself into a job where I was a rep, basically. I was traveling the length and breadth of the country by myself. My direct team and boss was based over in the UK. And there were some days I'd spend 6-7 hours in the car, and I'm not joking. I'd pull in for diesel, and I'd go in, and these smart people in these services would put, like, not just a fresh donut, they put a pack of donuts. And I'd be like, give me the pack of donuts. And I'd dashboard down, and I'd kind of emotionally eat. I wouldn't exercise. And this went on for a period of time. I stopped exercising because I hated running. I hated athletics. I hated sport. I got into social media where I compared myself with lots of other sports people who'd retired and moved on to different things. Why didn't I do that? You're an idiot. You're a fool, David. Why did you ever run? I resented my whole athletic career. That went on for a period of time. I said, you know what? I'll get a new job. Got a new job. Exact same scenario. Long story short, I suffered for 3 years in silence. I didn't talk about it, okay? Yes, this is mental health, and I can guarantee there's someone in this room, or there's someone close to someone in this room that is going through a mental health issue. That's the reality of the world we live in. And if I don't get up here and if I don't be open and honest with you guys and tell it how it is, I'm not changing the narrative, and I'm not helping to remove that stigma. Being male, alpha male, you come from sport, faster, fitter, stronger. Whatever you do, David, don't show any weakness. I lived by that. My greatest strength isn't how fast I ran at 400 metres. My greatest strength is that I showed an element of vulnerability and I put my hand up and I got help and advice. I struggled for a couple of years, and the reality was my wife was pregnant in late 2015, and I began having panic attacks. And on one Sunday, because I absolutely dreaded Mondays, Sunday was the worst day. I had a panic attack. She's at the kitchen table in floods of tears. She's 8 months pregnant. That was a catalyst for me to do something about it. And I quickly realised that I needed someone outside my circle. I got the help that I needed. I started a journey of counselling in 2016. I went every week. That's 10 years ago. One of the best things I've ever done, because I learned an awful lot about myself, about my journey. And you know what? It probably made me reflect on my career and I suppose the journey that I had. And one thing was missing. I wasn't exercising, I wasn't running. I got back into running by going up and doing my local park run, and I'll never forget the day because I dreaded it, because the ego took over. I walked up into Marley Park. Any park runners here? I know, don't worry, yeah, good. That's a good hand. It's a good hand. I went into Marley Park, and the first fella came up to me. He was like, Gillick, great to see you. You should win this. And I remember thinking, what? I'd never ran a 5K before in my life. I stood on the line, and they gave the safety briefing, and we'd like to welcome local Olympian. And I just thought, oh my God. But I went for it, okay? You swear I robbed the local shop. I absolutely went for it. I'm not making this up, this is an honest story. I went up through the forest, I hit 1K, 2K, the legs began to buckle, and then he passed me out, right? Pushing a buggy, I'm not messing, right? Pushing a buggy, right? Long story short, I finished it, sat down, Charlotte was with me, I had a coffee and it was great, and I said, you know what, green exercise, brilliant, okay? That became my go-to. Up every Saturday morning, I enjoyed it. After a while, I realised, you know what? I need to race again. Because what I learned was that I didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye to the sport on my terms. It spat me out bruised and battered, emotionally and physically. I needed to go back in order to move forward. So I got myself back on track, jumped in with a couple of junior athletes in Tala, knew the coach. And then after a while I said, you know what, I need to race. Didn't want to do it in Ireland because I didn't want to be compared to my previous times. So I emailed a meet promoter for a race, a little small race in a place called Pavia in Italy. Emailed her and I gave her a full I'm David Gillick, I did this. And her response was, no, I'm sorry, we have no space. And I said, okay, I'll go back and pull at the heartstrings. So I emailed her back and I said, look, I just a few injuries, just want to get back. And she said, and it's an Italian lady, through email, did you win Celebrity MasterChef Ireland? I said, yeah, I did. And she goes, no problem, on you come. So paid my own way, got over to Italy. I was in, this is the honest truth, I was in the B race, wasn't in the A race, I was in the B race, I came last, right? I ran 48.07 seconds, the same time I ran when I was back in 5th year in secondary school. Hand on heart, the best race I've ever ran. Okay, why? Because I did it for myself. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about medals, it was none of that. I wanted to say goodbye to sport on my terms, and I wanted to toe that line. And I know we all have hopes and dreams and things that we want to do, little changes. For me, there's a start line out there. Take the first step. And I think this thing is flashing at me here. The point of what I'm trying to say is, okay, because that was a real pivotal year for me when I got back on the track. I decided that I'm going to continue, and I made the team for the Europeans, and we went to the European Championships in the relay. We came 5th. Sliding door moment. We didn't qualify for Rio, but I got a call from RTE and they asked me would I go and cover it as part of their coverage for the Olympics in Rio, and I went, and that opened a whole other opportunity for me. And sometimes you just got to go for it. Sometimes you just got to grasp it. I had no clue what I was doing when I went over to Rio. I got to be honest. But you know what? That's what makes it, and that challenge and taking that leap of faith. So the last thing I want to leave you with, okay, and you're going to hear some fantastic storytellers, presenters. You've already heard an amazing story. When you walk out of here tonight, okay, can you just spend 44 seconds on yourself, okay? Because you know what? Something will resonate. And if you can just write that down, put it in the phone, and try and act on it in the next 24 hours, well, then you're going to get positive change, okay? So I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks a lot.